Hey everybody, I'm finally back with another video. I found these stools for $11.99 each at a thrift store nearby, and we are going to give these a nice little makeover. They had the cane webbing on top, the sides were a little scratched up, and some areas were peeling, and it just needed some TLC. I think we can do a nice little transformation on these and make them look really nice. The wood had scratches, some little dents, and the finish was just pretty bad. The cane webbing was fine, but it's not matching the color I'm gonna be going for, so let's make these modern. Let's get this project started. Like all my projects, the first thing we want to do is clean these guys up. So I'm going to take these old Gookie price tags off. We're going to spray it with crud cutter all over just to get all the dirt and grease off these chairs. They were pretty dirty. There was only really one leg that was just in rough shape. It was peeling, it was just falling off, and this is it here. This one was kind of the annoying one, so I just rub it really hard here, give it a good cleaning, and we will sand it down soon. After using the crud cutter rag, I actually just take a wet rag with just water and clean up the crud cutter residue as well. Now we're going to remove the old cane webbing. It's dark in color and it just doesn't go with the modern vibe I'm going for, and I actually enjoy redoing cane webbing. I did pressed cane on 4 chairs 2 videos ago. If you didn't see it, I'll put the link up here in the corner and you guys can check that out. But I enjoy the process, and the lighter color cane is just more modern and it's going to match the vibe I'm going for with these chairs. So, and under the cane webbing, the wood needs to be sanded, and it's basically impossible to sand it to make it match what I'm going to be doing with the wood. So that's another reason why I'm taking this off. Anyway, to remove it, I removed the spline. This chair was super easy. As you could see, it just popped right off, and now I'm using a utility knife. I'm just gonna go around and help cut it off, and then I could push the old cane webbing down through, and I just use the knife to help me remove it piece by piece. And then after that, inside the groove here, you go around with the utility knife and just kind of scratch your way through. Make sure you don't damage your wood, and that loosens up all the old glued on old cane. And then I use a screwdriver, just a tiny one, and I go around and just pop up all the pieces just to clean it out slowly. It is a time consuming process, so just be careful. After getting as much out with the screwdriver, I take some sandpaper and I just fold it up just so it fits in the groove, and then I go around and just give it a good sanding job just so it cleans it up even more. And then when that's done, I just grab a tack cloth just to keep things clean. After the first one, we obviously have to do the second stool as well. It's the same process, except this one it probably took me 4 times longer. The spline did not pop up like the first one, so I had to definitely give some elbow grease on this one, and it was just not fun. I also poked myself in the hand. It wasn't too bad, but I thought I'd throw on the little band-aid just to keep things clean. And eventually I got this spline off, and then we clean the inside out just like we did on the first one, and we can finally move on to the next steps. Now all the old cane is cleaned up, let's remove the wooden frames here. Let's flip them over. There's a few screws on the bottom here. I'm just going to use this Allen key, and we are going to remove the wooden frame. And also these stoppers on bottom were pretty ugly looking, so I popped them off too while it was upside down. It was that easy. Now it's time to use some sandpaper. I'm starting with a 240 grit just to clean these up. It's going to remove any scratches in the surface, just anything that makes it look pretty ugly. And this is that old leg I was talking about. This thing is just peeling apart. I was kind of surprised. I wasn't happy with it, but we had to sand this down to get rid of it, because whatever's going to come off here will come off in the future. So I'm using this gilding wax, this Empire Gold PBO, I think it's called, and I'm just going to be dabbing it on with this foam applicator that I cut in half. I didn't want to rub it on because it wasn't really staying on when I rubbed it, but when I dabbed it on, it stuck on nicely, and I think that the texture is pretty nice. So you just easily take the foam pad and you dab it on, and the gold really matched the original color gold. It just looked a little bit newer and fresh, and it was just a random idea that came to me, and I thought it was pretty cool, so I went with it. And I just dabbed it all over, and it took a bit of time, but it looked pretty nice. Here's just a quick before and after when I was finished one. You can really see the difference in the color. The gold is really shining on the fresh one with the gilding wax. So of course I threw it on number 2, and this is what it looked like the next morning when things were dried up. I was pretty happy with it, but we're gonna let them sit for now and we'll come back to these in a bit. Let's move on to the wood. So you can see these are pretty rough looking. We are going to start with a 120 grit sandpaper. Make sure to throw on a little dusting mask. It helps so you don't breathe that stuff in, because it gets pretty dusty pretty quick. And I just sand everything by hand here. My goal here is just to get down to the bare wood, remove all the old finish, and see what we're dealing with. After the lower grit sandpaper did most of the work, we used the 240 grit just to make things feel nice and smooth, and then I just go over everything and it cleans it up really nice. Just take a look at what the no finish looks like versus the finish, and I actually really like the bare wood here. This color is something that I was going for. Looking at the stool frames again, since we dabbed it on, the gilding wax is just kind of textured and it rubs off really easily by hand. So I went around with a paper towel and I kind of just buffed it so the textured pieces that were loose would fall off, and it just made it more durable. And then I also went around and saw some places that might have needed a bit more love, and I just cleaned them up. So now we're going to throw these little painter's pyramids under. I decided to keep the bare wood look on the wood, and we are going to add just some clear coat just to give this wood a bit of durability for the long run. After applying the clear coat, first coat to the wood, I tested out a small amount on the chair where the gilding wax was, and it seemed to work well. So the next day I said, okay, let's make this gilding wax a little bit more durable, and I just grabbed a dollar store brush and I'm just applying really thin layers of the clear coat directly on the gilding wax. These stools need durability. The gilding wax would likely just chip off pretty quick. It's not common to use clear coats over gilding wax. I'm not 100% sure on the rules and whatnot, but I tested it out. It seemed to make it more durable and it didn't fully ruin anything, so that's what I went with. After that, I grabbed my 220 grit sanding sponge. The first coat of poly is completely dry, and I just went around and did some light sanding to make any imperfections smooth, and grabbed my tack cloth and just cleaned it up. Then I applied the second coat. And after that, I did add another coat on the stools, and we did 3 coats actually total of the clear coat on the stools, and then we waited until the next day to continue on to this project. Here's what it looked like after the 3 coats. As you can see, it's still shiny. It has a nice color to it. The clear coat didn't cause any issues, so I am satisfied with my decision. Now it's time to get started on the cane. Let's turn the water on, let the tub fill up a little bit, and let's choose our size. We want to make sure we have enough cane for the project, so I bought just enough for 2 chairs. We split it down the middle, and then we are going to let it soak in the tub for about 15 minutes. The reason we soak it is that it makes it easier to work with, but most importantly, when it dries and you have the spline in, it actually tightens, and then you have a super tight and nice looking pressed cane. Now let me explain the process here a bit. So for press cane, you want to start off with cutting the correct amount that you're going to use. I cut about an inch around extra. You want more, because if you cut too short, well, you need to account for that you're pressing the cane in and you do tighten it up. So if you cut it too short, you basically cannot use the press cane. Now I'm pulling strands, and the reason we do this is it makes it easier to press the cane into the grooves. Once you get to the groove, you want to just make sure the strands are not in the groove. Do not start pulling strands in the seat, because if you start pulling it too far, you're going to ruin the seat. Once the strands are pulled back to the correct area, you want to start using something to wedge it in. I'm using broken clothespins. I just cracked them in half, and I'm using them to push in the cane at the start, and then I'm also using them as a little wedge to hold the cane in place. Super important, because you don't want it just popping out. I don't pull the strands all at once, so what I do is I pull the strands, press, pull the strands, press. That's basically the process here. Also, you want to press, and then the complete opposite side, you want to press that side in too, because then you know the cane is pressed in tight and correctly. So basically I pick like 4 corners, and that's how I get things started. And then I just do the rest of the circle. And here's how I just kind of press it in with the clothespin here. I just press in the cane. That's exactly what we're doing. Here's just my perspective of pressing it in. It's a little hard with one hand on the camera and one on the clothespin, but you get the idea. And eventually you finish pressing all the cane in. And now it's a good idea to take your spline and soak that in water. So you want to throw that in there. It's just easier to work with. You want to make sure the cane is pressed in hard. I just used this wooden spatula to make sure it was pushed in really hard. And now it's time to take out the chisel. So this step is super important. You want to cut off the extra strands, and you want to make sure you do it correctly, because if you don't cut them outwards and you cut them inwards, then your spline has nothing to grab onto and hold your pressed cane in place. So make sure you're pointing away from the pressed cane section, and you're just cutting the outside, not the inside. This will give your spline that total grip to just hold on to the pressed part of the cane. And now it's time to insert the spline. We want to use wood glue here. I'm using this Gorilla Glue, and we just go around the entire circle here, just fill in the crack with wood glue. Now it's time to insert the spline. You can dry it off after you take it out of the water just with a towel, and then you can start pushing it in by hand completely around. And you want to make sure you cut it in the right spot, so be careful not to cut it too short. And I just use a rubber mallet here just to make sure it stays in, and then I cut it with a utility knife right on the correct area so it matches up nicely with where I started. And then you can go around with the rubber mallet, make sure it's not a hammer because you don't want to damage it, and then you're good. And of course we did the second one, but I won't show you the full process because it's the exact same. So we finish that up and we can move on. Now, since we have no protectors on the bottom, I bought these on Amazon, these little furniture feet plugs, and they're just a little bit more new looking. They make it look pretty clean, so I popped them into each leg base. There were also little plug sections up here higher on the chair, but the black didn't really look good there, and they were a little bit too big, so I put the gilding wax just over the older ones, and it matched nicely. Now it's time to finally put the stool top back on, so let's insert the screws into the bottom of the wooden frame, and let's do one at a time. And finally, let's take a look at these stools one more time before we got started on them. And here is what they look like after bringing them back to life. I hope you guys liked this furniture project. I had a lot of fun. I think the new cane, the fresh wood, and the new gold look on the frame looks pretty awesome. If you guys think so, let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to check me out on Instagram as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.